Welcome to Legends in Leadership, brought to you by ISF and the Carrington Group. Legends in Leadership is an inspirational podcast featuring the stories of leaders who are making a difference. Our goal is to inspire you with the stories of leaders who come from humble beginnings, overcome challenges, and ultimately rise up to make a difference in people's lives.
Well, good morning, folks. This is Tyler Tillman. I want to welcome you to Legends in Leadership, episode number 20.
Wow.
I'm a family officer with the Carrington Group, and my co-host on today's podcast, Dr. Blair Ritchie, who's the executive director of the International Student Foundation, and Jason Smith, who's a partner of mine with the Carrington Group. And gentlemen, it's always fun to be on the air with you on Thursdays. New show time today, 11 o'clock, so excited to be here with you.
Hey,
yeah, same here.
So each week we like to kick off our shows with a little bit of leadership trivia, and the reason we do that is because we're fascinated by the stories of leaders who, like us, come from humble beginnings and then rise up as a leader to make a difference in people's lives. So Dr. Blair, what do you got teed up for us today?
we're going old school. We're going to go back into a little bit of U.S. history for this one. We've been doing some modern day leaders, so I thought we'd tax our little bit of appreciation for our founding. Today's legendary leader was one of the most famous of America's founders. Interesting story about his beginning. He was the 15th of 17 children, born to a relatively poor candle maker. That's how you get poor, is 17 kids. Can you imagine dinner at that place, right? He had only 2 years of formal education, 2 years of schooling. But he launched a printing and publishing business that produced the most popular almanac in colonial America. He was an inventor, a thinker, a scientist, and a statesman. I had a professor who once said that he himself had sired enough children that maybe he and not George Washington should be the father of our country. So who is this legendary leader? I'll be back at the end of the program and see what we know, okay?
Thanks for that extra color you provided us today. I appreciate that. Today, we're excited. We get to begin a series over the next many months featuring CEOs and leaders from the Dallas Business Journal's top 100 fastest growing private companies. And I'm excited about today's guest, Luis Barros, who's the CEO and founder of Leviate Air Group. It was founded in 2014. Leviate was established to provide the business aviation world with a standard bearer in service, client satisfaction, and real-world aviation experience. Luis, over 10 years of experience in the private aviation industry. You began your aviation career at a local county airport, which led him to learn directly under the director of the Ohio State Airport during coursework toward a degree in aviation management. And then from there, he went on to dispatch for a large Part 135 operator for several years before taking on a chartered sales duty. Quickly, Luis became the top salesperson and ventured into end-user sales before relocating to Texas to establish and grow one of the largest charter sales groups in the central U.S. And then after years of success with that, in building, training, and managing aviation executives, Luis founded Leviate Air Group, where he could ensure his company truly focused on industry-leading service and customer satisfaction. So, Luis, great to have you on the show today. We're really excited about the listeners getting to hear a little bit of your story and a little bit about your journey.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So what we like to do, Luis, on our shows is just rewind the tape a little bit. Go back to your childhood. Where did you grow up, and what did you learn growing up that's really helped you most as a leader?
Ooh, that can be a kind of a long story there, but no, I was born in Ecuador.
Mm-hmm.
Both my parents are from Ecuador. A lot of my family's still back there. I only moved to the States when I was 5, and I kind of bounced around. I was in Jersey for a little bit, then Ohio. Living with some relatives, and then, as you said there, I settled down in central Ohio. But I really started when I was 15. I wasn't the most, what's the word, just walking the straight and narrow kid. And my stepfather at the time said, you got to straighten up. You got to figure something out, man. Like, you're too smart to, let this go to waste and, just be messing around. So he's like, what do you like? What are you interested in? And we would pass, it was the Warren County Airport in Ohio. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, that seems interesting to me. Take me by the airport. And that's where it started. I was 15. I'm like, okay, I love this. I love everything about this. taking apart a little 172, going through ground school, just everything. And that was it. And I've been doing business aviation ever since. And it's been, a passion of mine. I did aviation management at Ohio State. Like any dumb young kid, I wanted to be a pilot and see the world. And thank God that didn't happen. I love pilots, but man, that would not have been for me. And I ended up going the business route. It worked. It just worked out perfectly. A lot of the things that have happened to me, I can honestly say were a little serendipitous. I got hired on by NetJets, who's based in Columbus, Ohio, and in other at the time it was a small company that managed just 6 jets as opposed to a few hundred jets. And I chose a small company. I chose that small company, and I was making $27,000 a year, and I thought I was rich. Like, I made it. I'm here. It was the best move ever because it was right before the economic downturn, and NetJets had a right size. Everyone right sized at that time, and I would have been one of the first people let go. So it just kind of took off from there.
That's awesome. Talk a little bit, Luis. It sounds like your stepdad was an influencer in your life, but who are some of the top influencers for you as you have kind of navigated in the aviation space and found that to be your passion? I've kind of had a dynamic career. I've done just a little bit of everything from operations to sales to management, training. I would say probably one of the biggest influencers, to this day, was probably one of my first friends in aviation. He was the first guy that, helped train me on the day-to-day stuff. His name was Sean Wilkinson. He's still up in Ohio. But he instilled in me, I guess, this kind of playful appreciation for business aviation because it's hectic. Some people just get burnt out. They can't do it. It's too much stress. It's too much, very high dollar amounts being thrown around, and it's so dynamic that it's not for everyone. So he approached it with this kind of zest for life that I loved. I think it immediately, infected me, and now my business partner is actually waiting out there in the booth out there. He always comments that I have some uncanny ability to just remain calm in the most dire of straits and just navigating. When everything seems to be falling around, I seem to keep a steady hand, and I think it all goes back to back then. Just appreciating that this is the environment in which I chose to conduct business. It's never get too high in the high or too low in the lows, huh?
Correct. Correct.
What do you think the value has been of that varied background and learning and doing a variety of things in this one industry? How has that helped you?
Well, I probably would have never guessed years ago, but now the company that we started, Leviate, it does everything, it's kind of bizarre. Some people do aircraft sales and acquisitions, or they do aircraft management and operations, or some people do air charter brokerage, but very few people legitimately do all three. And just by, the natural course of my career progression, I was exposed to all of that. Mm-hmm. So we really get to excel on all those fronts.
So let's back up a little bit because I want to understand you came out of a sales environment, correct? And then talk about, there's always this amazing kind of you're jumping off the ledge when you move over into entrepreneurship or you move over into becoming your own boss or you're owning a business. So talk about that leap and how Leviate Air from doing what you were doing kind of became about and how you stayed so calm and deciding to do that.
Well, it wasn't even the sales background, I would say, because my very first start was in what's called dispatch. Mm-hmm. And that is the grunt work of grunt work. I was doing pilot hotel reservations. I was getting Hertz rental cars, mm-hmm. On the road. You're doing the grunt work. And I think when it came time for me to make that leap into, small business ownership, being your own boss, making your own paycheck, I guess, I think that's what really came into play because when it's just you, you're doing everything. There's no one to help you out. You have to mm-hmm. get the coffee. You have to make the hotel reservation. Mm-hmm. It's all you. So that's why the first few months when it was just me, I think that's probably what helped me the most is I never felt above doing all that stuff.
Makes you stronger.
Absolutely.
What doesn't kill you makes you stronger,
Absolutely.
right? For sure. Talk, Luis. Every leader has their greatest achievement and their greatest failure. So for you, oftentimes the greatest failure is what guides you on the plane that you need to be on. So what would you consider kind of in your career that turning point or the greatest failure that kind of reshaped who you are and it took you where you wanted to go?
I think about that a lot. I always say that one of the worst things you can have is just ego. Ego kills everything. Ego is what keeps you from admitting that you made a mistake. Ego is what digs you into a deeper hole. And it's so hard for people to just say like, hey, whoa, everyone pause. I messed up. Now, how do I fix it? Mm-hmm. People just don't like admitting when they've done something wrong. I remember back in my early days, I messed something up on an international trip, and I forgot to apply for some permit, and it messed up the trip. And it was Friday at 5, and there was nothing I could do. And I remember I was selling it to an outside party, and they said, Louis, just put the phone away from your ear because I'm going to yell at you. Like I'm going to scream. I'm like, I know, I have it coming. And I didn't, owned up to it. And I always think back to that. And I'm like, yeah, sometimes you just got to face it. Just stop trying to dig a deeper hole.
So in that example, so you owned it. And then what was the response at the other end of the line?
I think it was more appreciated than me lying, me trying to say, oh, well, really it's because of this or this happened, but it's because of this. It's like, no, I messed up. Now let's fix it. So it was good. And we actually ended up working through it, and it worked out. But if I would have tried to cover it up for another hour or two, it wouldn't.
Mm-hmm. How do you help push that sense of accountability, responsibility through your organization? So as you're scaling and growing the company, making sure that those types of values that are important to you are actually acknowledged and appreciated throughout the organization?
We have a pretty great culture at our company. It's something that I pride myself on. And, just speaking from being at places I've been, either associated with or working at directly, I mean, there's so many places in our industry where people are just walking in and saying, I hate this, I hate why? Why am I walking in here? I never wanted to, I love that. I can pretty humbly say that everyone I think that comes to work likes being there. And I think that's because of the culture. We have a pretty good open door policy. We have fun, but it's always, all right, if something's going on, you can always walk in my office and just talk to me about it. Mm-hmm. I never want to get it to a place where someone feels that they have to lie or they have to cover something up because, they think the consequences will be, way too big. I'm like, no, just talk to me about it. I understand things happen. And I think that's just all part of the culture.
Yeah.
If handling failure is a challenge, I think handling success sometimes can be a bigger challenge to the ego, especially. Talk about that a little bit, and just how you keep your ego in check whenever, because you're obviously enjoying a nice run here, so
sure.
That's good.
Yeah, no, it has been great, and our growth has actually outpaced what I have two business partners. I think it's outpaced what me and my two business partners have, ever anticipated. And I think for me, speaking just personally, I think I lucked out. I have two amazing business partners that I think do keep me in check. We all excel at different things, but we all want to succeed together. So I don't think, we probably give each other a hard time, but I don't think any one of us would ever get too big a head, or else the two others would say, hey, calm it down. You're getting too big for your britches there.
I'm curious, Luis, you're on this great run as Blair's talking about, and you've become a mature leader in your prime and on your way towards your prime. Look back a little bit, and I'm thinking back to you, that 15-year-old, but really even beyond that, just out of college, what would be the advice that you would give that 20-something-year-old Luis, knowing what you know now?
Probably a couple things. I know early on in life, I would say, stop messing around so much. I was fortunate where I seemed to be that kid that when I decided to stop messing around and put my head down and get the work done, I would get it done. But I would let it go to the very last minute. I would push that line because I knew I could get away with it. If, at that point in my life, I would love to have had the mindset or like, hey, don't push it so close. Just get the work done, get it out of the way. I think later on in life would probably just be don't be afraid to take a risk. When I decided to start the company in 14, I mean, I didn't have anything. I emptied out my savings account, my 401k, and just said, all right, I hope this works. And, you know, I don't recommend that, that approach always, but you have to be willing to take that risk. It really pays off if you believe in what you're doing.
I hear that a lot. You know, we're entrepreneurs. We work with a lot of entrepreneurs, and it always comes back to taking a risk. So let's talk about that a little bit. Why do you think it is so hard for entrepreneurs to come out of that kind of safe space that they're in and to take the blinders off and go, you know what, I'm willing to take that risk? Why do you think it oftentimes takes them longer to make that choice to do so than if they would have just done it years prior? They probably would have been way more successful, way more fast.
Yeah, you know, like anything, hindsight is 20/20. I would say a lot of it is external. You know, I did it in 2014, so the economy had been recovering for a good while. If that would have happened to me in 2009 and 10, I probably would have waited another couple of years. So some of it's out of our control. But, you know, I would say a lot of it too is just, it's just the character type, you know, not in a good or bad way, but some people just do not want that kind of burden on their shoulders. They don't either want to be responsible for their own paycheck, you know, not that they're not hard workers, but they don't want to, you know, be responsible for that, or more so they don't want to be responsible for other people's livelihoods. And sometimes that's just, you know, just something you're either built with or you're not.
So it really comes down to identifying strengths and weaknesses. So just self-awareness. Who am I? And, you know, am I really built for this? Am I built to be an entrepreneur? And we talk a lot about the importance of growing organizations, putting the right people in the right seats on the bus, and really helping folks, you know, be in a position to excel using their strengths and really going after and putting them in a place where they can be successful versus trying to force them into a situation that really isn't a good fit for them. So appreciate you sharing that. I'm curious, we have an interesting culture that we're in today, ever evolving from a variety of different standpoints. So I'm curious, as you look at our culture today, what do you see as the greatest challenges that leaders are facing going forward?
You know, in our space, it's always, I guess I don't, it's weird because my business partner always calls me an old soul, so I have to be aware sometimes that I'm 33. You know, I'm not 60. But we do kind of pick up on this this culture of you know, social media and Instagram and things not really being what they seem. You know, especially in our space, everyone wants the look and the sexiness and the feel of, oh, I'm flying private, or I'm doing this, or this super high end luxury thing. A lot of it's just getting through that and finding out, okay, like what's real, like what's actually happening, who are the real players, who's actually, you know, contributing something. So I think getting past a lot of that is really important. You know, that's why we place so much emphasis on bringing, you know, real, you know, experienced people, not people just kind of faking it till they make it. But yeah, we see that a lot just naturally by the environment we're in.
So do people ask to rent your plane for like 5 minutes, just do a few selfies in it, you know? And
you know, people do that.
Yeah.
There's a company for that now, is there not?
Based in Moscow or somewhere in Russia, I believe. And yeah, people lined up out the door.
I just saw that on Instagram, actually. I was thinking to myself, really? Yeah.
the high-end cars.
Talking about an ego, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and you saw that with the Fire Music Festival too.
Yeah.
And that's what they sold, was this like amazing image that turned out to have no substance behind it.
That's awesome, Luis. I'm really glad you brought up the Fire Festival so that you can get sued and not me. That's perfect. That's awesome. Let's talk about Leviate. It's founded 2014, as you said, and you guys established yourself to provide the business aviation world with that standard bearer and service. And it's really built around charter, management, and aircraft sales. So, you know, for the folks like us that are not in that space or in that world on a daily basis, we think of things like NetJet and Wheels Up and those companies, because golfers and sports folks are out there with that stuff plastered all over them. So what makes you guys different? What makes Leviate a different company doing something that's innovative in your industry?
Sure. Well, first, let me start by saying both those companies, NetJets and Wheels Up, amazing companies. They deliver a phenomenal product. And we're vendors for them. You know, we fly for them, you know, when they have overages or, you know, external flights that aren't part of the program. You know, that being said, we offer flexibility that, you know, they have certain programs. If you want a quarter share or an eighth share or 16th share of a plane, well, that's, you know, there are very defined rules and programs and how you do that and what the cost structure is for that. If you want to be a Wheels Up member, okay, they have several different programs, but okay, this is the entry fee and this is what you're going to pay us every month. We're pretty different. If you want to fly just once with us or 100 times with us in a year, you can do that. You know, if you want to put a bunch of money up front so it's just easier, you can. If you want no money up front, you can do that. If you want a jet card, we offer that. If you flew so much last year that you said, all right, it's finally time for me to buy a plane, you can do that and never leave the Leviate family of companies. If you buy a plane and you flew it a bunch, that all right, that was fun, but I don't want to deal with pilots and hangar and insurance anymore. Manage it for me. That's kind of the final step, and that's also part of our company. So we wanted to build this little ecosystem where pretty much anyone doing anything in business aviation could do it with Leviate.
That's fascinating. So let's talk about the complexity of that. So it sounds like you guys are, hitting all of these different components. So what are the challenges of managing that, and how have you built a team to really be able to carry that responsibility and burden?
Sure. Well, I think like you mentioned, it was so important to put the right people in place, and we love, every one of our employees, we could trust in their duties, without a doubt. To speak to complexities, I think so it was an ongoing joke. Every year we expanded or built another company or acquired another company and added it to the Leviate brand, I guess. Every company we added was either more daunting or added a lot more complexity. The last one of which was the actual FAA air carrier. It's a licensed air carrier, and it's pretty much the most robust air carrier you can get, to fly. We can fly all around the world. We can carry 10 or more passengers. That wasn't a fake it till you make it sort of situation. The company started as what's called a charter brokerage, and literally it's not regulated. Literally anyone can be a charter broker. You just need a laptop and a cell phone. Just say, hey, fly with me, and you find planes for people.
That's scary, by the way.
That is very scary. We're part of a group that's trying to push forward some regulations, so it's a little more monitored and a little safer. But when you're an FAA licensed air carrier, I mean, there's no, you're being monitored by
there's
the
no
FAA.
hiding.
Yeah, there's no hiding it. You need key positions in place: director of maintenance, chief pilots, director of operations. That, I mean, they have to know their stuff. So I think that's I think when we got to that point, we said, all right, this is for real. Like, this is, everything else we were doing has been great, and we had great success. But at this point, this is a whole other level. We have to have real leaders, real experience. I mean, like, just the top of everything. And I think we did that. We've had that company for about a year and a half, and it's more than doubled in size now. And it's having great success. So I think we put the right people in place.
Often talk with folks who've had some experience in the private aviation space, and there's always a conversation around when is this, having a full-time plane that I'm flying in, or sharing in a plane with somebody else. When is this really practical, and when should I, when should I do this, or when should I say, man, I'm just wasting money? So from your perspective, knowing what you know and looking at business aviation, what is your ideal client, and when does it make sense from your perspective to have to have a private jet to be flying all the time, or to be in one all the time?
Yeah, it's really easy, and the good thing for us is everyone is our prime client, because we offer so many different things. Really, it's all a matter of how many hours you fly per year. Mm-hmm. So if you look back on your last year and you say, oh man, I flew almost 200 hours, it's probably time for you to buy a plane, because the economics of it makes sense. So after a while, plus you can appreciate the asset, once you acquire it. So a lot of different factors in it, but it's all a matter of how much you fly. If you're just taking the family to Aspen, at Christmas time, you probably shouldn't buy a plane. It's just going to sit there for the rest of the year. But yeah, that's pretty much the biggest factor.
So do you guys do a lot of shared flights where folks can get on with other folks that are planes that are leaving and going either regionally or heading down to Miami, or?
We don't really get into that. That's called ride sharing or per seat sort of travel. Mm-hmm. That's kind of a dicey thing. Some people in our space have gotten in trouble in recent history for attempting stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there's a model out there that lets that be viable and work. I haven't seen it. But maybe it will in the future, but not something we're involved with.
How do people find out about Leviate? What's the best way to get in contact with you guys to learn more about this and find out if you're a good fit for them?
We direct everyone to the website. We're really proud of the website. We have some great digital marketing people, and that really explains a lot of our story. What's amazing, most of our growth so far has just been word of mouth, just organic growth. We do some advertising, but you're not going to see a Leviate billboard outside of Love Field anytime soon. But yeah, a lot of it's just online and directing people to our digital outlets.
That's awesome. And I know if anybody's listening out there and wants information, we're posting that in the chat section for an opportunity to get out to Leviate's website. As we wrap up today with our show, Luis, one of the questions that we like to ask the leaders that we have on our show is, what is a book or a leadership book or a piece of literature that you've read through your journey that really has had an impact on you and your decision making?
If I'm thinking early on, that's probably a hard question. I know currently I'm reading a Michael Lewis book because he's actually a client of ours, and it's called The Fifth Risk. And I guess the best way to describe it, I don't know if any of you have read Michael Lewis's books. He was involved with The Big Short, Moneyball, all that stuff. Yep. It's probably a really good guide on how not to do things and not transition. And seeing how we acquire a company, every year, it feels like. We've gone through a lot of transitions and a lot of, transitions, and it's a really good expose on how not to do things.
That can be helpful.
Yeah, sometimes examples are quite impactful for sure. Been great having you on the show today. Appreciate your time and look forward to watching you guys grow as a company and seeing where you take Leviate. Dr. Blair, we got to find out who our trivia legend is today. Who is it?
I mean, think about this. You go from the 15th shot of a pork candle maker to having your face on a $100 bill. The wonderful
that gives it away.
Founder of Benjamin Franklin.
That's right.
Yes. There you go.
Yes, thank you. Folks, it has just been a pleasure. Luis, it's been a pleasure. Hope you had as much fun as we had. And as we wrap up today, on behalf of the Carrington Group, ISF, and of course our special guest, Luis Barros, appreciate everybody listening. Remember this: if your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, then you are a leader. Have a great week.
Legends in Leadership is brought to you by the Carrington Group. Carrington Group is a family office with a passion for helping business leaders and their families make smart choices and fulfill their highest aspirations. To learn more about the Carrington Group, visit their website at www.carringtonfo.com or Google Carrington Group, Dallas, Texas. ISF is committed to leadership development for aged-out foster care and orphaned youth. ISF's mission is to transform these youth into tomorrow's leaders with scholarships, mentoring, and leadership training. To learn more about ISF, visit their website at isfsite.org or Google International Student Foundation to learn more.
Securities offered through Regulus Advisors, LLC. Member FINRA/SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Regal Investment Advisors, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Regulus Advisors and Regal Investment Advisors are affiliated entities. Carrington Group and this broadcast are independent of Regulus Advisors and Regal Investment Advisors.